An absolute delight to welcome each and every one of you to the inaugural Sue Talks. Now, a little bit of housekeeping as the MC must do. Please have your phones on silent. If you need to pop out for any reason, that's no problem. We encourage you to go to the back of the room and just leave via the closest side door. Now, the call of the day is exuberant clapping, cheering, and enthusiasm. In fact, Melbourne, as a city sider, I have a challenge for you. It goes like this. I am wondering if you can channel the collective energy that your state, your great state, brings to the AFL Grand Final to women speaking up and stepping out today. Is this possible? Yes. Excellent. I knew you had it in you. Our intention is to make this an incredibly warm and toasty room today. My name is Sharon Longridge, and along with my wonderful colleague, Professor Anne Lytle, we are the directors of your Leadership Voice Women in Focus with the Monash Business School. And we are absolutely delighted to have you here. And at the heart of this event is inclusion. And accordingly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we gather, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And we honour their elders, present and past, and we commit ourselves to a future with reconciliation at its heart. Our intention is that you have a marvellous afternoon. But this event is also symbolic. A cheeky play on the now world-renowned TED Talks, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which stands for Technology, Education and Design, we now have the Sue Talks, which stands for Speak Up Equally. And today you'll hear from 24 diverse, amazing female leaders as they step up and speak out. And our all-female lineup is a conscious counterpose to the entrenched gender imbalance that we have had on the public stage for too long. Currently, 1 in 6 voices at forums and conferences are women's. In terms of media commentary, it's 1 in 4. And the external barriers stopping women from speaking up have become entrenched. In a risk-averse business world, let's face it, it's easier to back the tried and tested and experienced talent who have invariably been men. And the internal barriers are corrosive. The silencing weight of self-doubt is uncomfortably familiar to many people when it comes to public speaking, especially women. But thankfully this is changing. We're entering into a new era. And there is now momentum to amplify women's voices like never before. Take, for example, the national initiative called the Panel Pledge. It is calling for equal genders in every forum. It has the backing of business heavyweights and corporate leaders, including the CEO of some of the largest organisations in this country, who are saying we need equal genders at every forum that we speak at. In fact, last year we saw 5 of the most booked male speakers declare that they would boycott speaking at events if there were not women on stage. And they were criticising event organisers who kept keeping with what they called the Dude Fest. So it's wonderful that this shift is now happening. Recently, a new initiative called Rare Bird Speak was launched. It is a world-first talent agency for exclusively female speakers. So if your company backs the Panel Pledge, and why wouldn't you, you can go to Rare Bird Speak to find fantastic stage-ready talent who are women. And then there is our program, Your Leadership Voice Women in Focus. And when Anne and I heard about the Panel Pledge, we were incredibly excited about this initiative. But we also strongly felt that if we are to actually achieve gender parity on stages, women deserve the extra support and the extra skills to command a space powerfully. Because the reality is that we have been nudging women up the leadership ranks for decades. And despite noble efforts, the sad reality is that the gains have been agonisingly slow. So enough of the glass ceiling, the bamboo ceiling, the stiletto ceiling, and the so-called marzipan ceiling. That's that layer of management that sits just under the senior executives. And what we know, based on research from the US Centre for Work-Life Policy, is that in the marzipan layer, we have 1 in 3 women. However, that's where most of them stop, and only 21% break through to that top layer, the C-suite icing. Yet, we need to accelerate women's rise into leadership now like never before. The time has come. The world needs a critical mass of female leaders as soon as possible. And let's face it, the business case is very clear. We all know that diversity of thought results in better decision making. We also have now proven that having more female leaders improves the bottom line. Women leaders are lucrative. But we actually have a more pressing matter to deal with. And that is, we are currently facing a global crisis in leadership. We are living through and witnessing an implosion in trust in the mainstream institutions and the people leading them. The 17th Annual Edelman Trust Barometer Survey spoke to 33,000 people this year from 28 countries. Here's what they found. That 2/3 of the countries surveyed, their people now distrust governments, the media, business, and the not-for-profit sector. There is a wave of heightened cynicism echoing around the world. And the credibility of leaders has also plummeted. It fell 12 points this year to 37%. And surely this is a wake-up call that things need to change at the top. And that the old legacy styles of management have possibly reached their expiry date. And this corrosion of trust comes at a very volatile time for humankind, environmentally, socially, economically, and geopolitically. Just think of trust versus the rocket man. So we really have an imperative to act. And as we will hear in the Sue Talks today, we need to have harmony, unity, and collaboration, eclipsing competition and combat if we're to face these enormous challenges. And just some of those challenges include, how do we prepare ourselves, our teams, our children, and our robots for the forward march of the 4th Industrial Revolution? How do we find safe and welcoming homes for millions of people around our planet right now who are displaced? And how do we manage the diary of Dr. Google, the busiest GP in the world? These are just some of the topics that you will hear this afternoon at the Sue Talks from our graduates from the Your Leadership Voice program. And these women over the last 6 months have made great friendships. They've laughed a lot. We've eaten a few chocolate brownies. And they've also learnt techniques to tell powerful stories, to negotiate skillfully, to align their mind, to harness their body and their voice, and to genuinely back themselves as leaders and as storytellers. And ever since our early ancestors gathered around the crackling glow of the fire, to the millions of commuters tweeting on the train, humans have collected and crafted stories to make sense of the good, the bad, the unlikely, and the transformative. We learn, we share, and we make meaning through stories. And visionary leaders tell memorable stories that touch our heart, that open our mind, and propel us to act. And now it's time to hear how she tells them. Thank you.